live in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. We've talked about so much now today, from the US President Trump and tariffs to global risk. Let's get to Nigeria. Let's get to Nigeria and the intentions, the message that Nigeria is putting forward here in Davos. That, of course, has to do with a number of things. One of them is to continue to pursue sound economic management. Also, commitment to market-oriented reforms and to safeguard institutional credibility. Let's take a quote from the Ministry of Finance with respect to Nigeria's role message here in Davos. Ministry said, Nigeria's engagement at Davos this year is shaped by a simple proposition. In a divided global economy, dialogue anchored in reform credibility and macroeconomic discipline matters more than ever. We're happy to have the special advisor to President Tinubu on finance and economic matters, Sanyade Okoli. Welcome. Happy New Year. It is good to see you again. And kicking things off with that quote, can you flesh that out? Does that mean when you're involved in dialogue that reforms just make your hand stronger? What flesh that statement from the Ministry of Finance out for us.
So hello, Rotus, and good to be on your show again after so long.
A long time.
You know, as with any quality dialogue, you require a certain level of credibility to not only be let into the room, but to be able to participate and listen to. And in truth, Nigeria has needed to undertake these reforms to ensure that we are seen as a credible player in the global market, especially when you're discussing with investors.
Now, speaking of which, investors and reforms. We've looked at, of course, the message, the commitment to macroeconomic reforms. Earlier, we're just talking with my colleague in Lagos, Abi Owolabi, how the IMF has upgraded Nigeria's growth prospects. The World Bank upgraded. The WEF. Around the world, everyone is just part of this reform ministry. But I want to ask you about the reform tightrope, because there's lots of praise coming from multilateral organizations, economists. Even the Nigerian business community is excited about what's happening here. But there's still, of course, the everyday Nigerian on the street that says, look, these reforms have been painful. How do you walk the tightrope?
So you're absolutely right. I think tightrope is the right word. And yes, there were necessary reforms, but we recognize that there are what Nigerians are facing, what I'll call the transition pains. Because the truth is, if you've been headed in one direction and you're trying to make quite a significant change in direction, it is not easy. Change is not easy. But as long as there's clarity in terms of where we're trying to go. If we're trying to improve reduce poverty in Nigeria, the only sustainable way of doing that is to create jobs. If you're trying to create jobs, the only sustainable way of doing that is to attract investments. And you need the macroeconomic framework that will attract not just local investors, but also international investors. So the macroeconomic environment of Nigeria is a lot more stable, it's a lot more improved, which is why we're hearing the positive things, as you said, from the
IMF and
the development partners and investors. But that change had implications for something like inflation, which is what Nigerians are feeling. And so the effort now is to ensure that the benefits of the reforms go down to the Nigerian individual as quickly as possible. And the way to ensure that that happens is to ensure that you're investing in sectors that really matter. One, as I said, attract the investment, but also invest in catalytic areas. Food security and agriculture. It's multidimensional in that not only does it ensure that we have food on our plate, as I'm sure you know, it's been a huge driver of inflation. So if we can, stimulate food production, it will help to bring down inflation, but also it creates jobs. The electricity sector. There's a lot we're trying to do there because, again, businesses need electricity. Right. Individuals need electricity, but businesses need it to ensure that their productivity can increase and they can create jobs. We're building homes, roads, et cetera. So, yes, it is difficult, but we just ask that please, where we're trying to go is to increase prosperity, We're trying to ensure we attract investors and just work with us. I don't want to use that phrase, exercise patience, because it annoys me. But please just, continue to bear with us and work with us as we make the way forward.
You're in tune with the public. I understand you know wanting to use that phrase. Look, maybe you've heard this question several times. I have to ask you. It's the talk of the town within our circles. The Nigeria House, the launch. The significance, if you can touch on that.
It's all part of the trying to ensure we're attracting and retaining investment. And what better place for Nigeria to be able to tell its own story here at Davos, but to have its own Nigeria House. And there are lots of different sessions going on speaking about different sectors so that you have investors from across the world being able to come in and listen and hear what Nigeria is doing, where Nigeria is trying to go. And also it's a space for meetings as well. So later today, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, not only does he have a speaking engagement there, he has a follow-up meeting there. So it's all part of the push that we're driving economic growth through investment.
Fantastic stuff. I had one more question, but we're out of time. You already touched on jobs. It was about jobs, and you've touched on that already. Sanyade Okoli.
It's a priority. That's all I can say.
Fantastic. That's a great way to end the segment. Jobs are a priority in Nigeria, and the Ministry of Finance, the rest of the economic delegation has that as priority number one. Sanyade Okoli, Special Advisor to President Tinubu on Finance and Economic Matters. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you. And you've closed out the show. Great way. I wouldn't rather have it any way than to close out the show with you. Thank you. That's going to do it for the Global Business Report. Do stay tuned to Arise News. From all of us, thank you so much for watching. I'm Rotu Sudiri. The coverage continues all this week live in Davos, Switzerland. See you tomorrow.